Hey there, it's Leo, welcome back for another tutorial. Today we're checking out Toon shading and I'm gonna show you a very easy and accurate way of performing it. The only drawback of this method is that it works only on the universal render pipeline. Before starting, I'm gonna explain you how does rendering work, and at the same time I'm gonna set up a new scene in the background with a few cubes and spheres with all different colors so that we can test the Toon effect on it later. There are several rendering methods. You probably heard of Raycasting, which is the most accurate and realistic way of rendering objects. But the most used method is called Raycasting, and this is how it works. For each pixel on the screen, the engine casts a ray whose characteristics depend on the camera projection settings. If the ray reaches the camera far plane without hitting any object, then we will render the skybox, or a plain color. It really depends on your lighting settings. If the ray hits an object but this object doesn't have any material attached, then we'll just render a pink color, or at least this is what Unity does. And last but not least, if the ray hits an object with one or several materials attached, then we will call the associated shaders that will provide a color to be displayed on the pixel. During this process, Unity keeps in memory a few different textures. For example, the shadow map, or the depth texture, or the opaque texture. And we're going to use the two last one, so the depth texture and the opaque texture. To be able to use them, we need to enable them within the quality settings of your project. Then we're going to use URP's main feature, which is add a render feature wherever you want in the render pipeline. As you can see, it's very simple and you just have to provide a material. And now you get it. The material we're going to provide is a Toon shading material. But first we need to build it, so I'm just gonna create a new Shadergraph and instantiate it in a material. For now, I'm gonna use a plain red color to test it out. After setting the material in the render feature and setting layer mask to everything, you can see that the scene appears all red. In fact, it depends where you insert your render feature in the rendering pipeline. If I put it before rendering opaques, obviously nothing will happen, as I only have opaques object in my scene. So I'm gonna stick with something that comes after rendering the opaques. And now it's finally time to work on the Shadergraph to perform the Toon shading effect. Thanks to what we enabled in the settings earlier, we can now access to the Scene Color node within the Shadergraph. If you connect it to the color output, it won't change anything and you will see the scene just like nothing was happening. Now we need to do a downsampling of this color in order to make this cell shading effect. As the color channels are stored between 0 and 1, you just multiply by an integer, which is the amount of cells that you allow per channel. Then you round to make sure that only this number of values are actually possible, and then you put it back between 0 and 1 by dividing by this same number. Fairly easy, that's just a few nodes to put together and it's doing the job. Now it's time to make our outlines. To do that, we're going to use the depth texture. And it's accessible from the node Scene Depth. If we connect it to the color output, you will see that pretty much everything is black. But it depends on the camera for a plane. If I reduce it, you will see how depth is appearing. The only input of the scene depth node is the screen position. As you can see, if I change the default input by the node screen position, it works just the same. But I can shift the coordinates. So, for example, if I take the screen position we had and a shifted screen position and I just subtract the two outputs from the scene depth node, you will see already kind of an outline appearing. But it's just a proof of concept. Now we need to be more accurate on how much we shift and in which direction. I want the user to be able to control the widths of the outline in pixel. So I need the screen widths and heights. By shifting my screen position on the horizontal axis by 1 divided by the screen widths, it will move exactly from 1 pixel. And that's exactly the same for the vertical axis and the screen height. And as you can see, it looks better now. Now, instead of subtracting just 2 shifted depth textures, we're going to do this for all 4 diagonals. It will look much more balanced. I know now the Shadergraph just looks like a big plate of noodles, but we have no choice there. But it was worth the pain. As you can see, the outline is just perfect. But there are still some things to fix. For example, you can see that in the scene view, it's not rendering the same as in the game view. So to get rid of that, we're just going to divide by a multiple of the camera far plane. Another thing to fix is this white area far on the plane. There are a few methods to get rid of that, and I decided to choose to fade the outlines with the distance. I could have chosen to compare the normals as well, but I've eaten enough Shadergraph noodles today, and I like the fact that outlines appear only on closer objects. To do that, we just need to divide the current output value by the scene depth, but in eye mode this time. And as you can see, I get rid of this white area in the back. And now we're almost done. We just have to mix the outline and the cell shading with a simple blur. I want the user to have control over the color of the outline, so I'm adding a color property. There you go, you're almost done with the Toon shading effect. There are still a few things to fix. The first one is, when you zoom into the game mode, you can see that the outlines are really sharp. To fix that, you need to enable anti-aliasing on the camera. Another issue is that we're still getting this outline chunk far on the plane, and to do that, I'm going to fade even more with the distance. I forgot to mention that in the meantime, I changed the way I compute the outlines by just taking either 0 or 1 with a compare node. And I would give the power to the user using a property for that. The last feature I want to add is a fade between the real colors and the Toon colors, so that you can get kind of a Toon shading but not much, with still a few gradients. It's just a simple URP between the real scene color and the cell shading we made earlier. And here is the result. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I did making it. I haven't seen any other tutorial using this method, so I'm counting on you to share it because everybody deserves to know such a trick. I also had fun with cross-hatching shadows. That really shows the power of URP, and I think there is room for many other tutorials, so make sure to be subscribed not to miss them. Until then, see you next time. Cheers!